A reading from the Gospel according to Matthew. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at the rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him, and calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet, 'And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people, Israel.'" Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child. And when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there, ahead of them, went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. Then they saw the star had stopped. They were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then opening their treasure chest, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for the country by another road.
Can you place yourself with the three wise guys traveling from some far-off place, walking, riding donkeys or camels, probably from Mesopotamia somewhere, through the dry lands toward the Jewish nation? What fools were they? Why would anyone do this? Why would anyone do this? Why would we care about this little event? It's a cute scene of the three guys dressed up as kings arriving at the manger, surrounded by Mary and Joseph, and carrying those golden boxes filled with, well, rare air, usually, and what we do in our Christmas stories, right? And even though they're called the three kings, in much Bible lore, there is really no evidence that they were royal. And much as we would like them to be interracial, we have no evidence of the complexion of these three. Probably being Mesopotamian, they were darker than some of us and lighter than others. They were observers of the heavens. And they noticed a new stellar event, and, well, being wise, they studied texts. They looked at the religious texts of all of the cultures to figure what would this point to, when they only found that in Jewish literature, our Bible, there was some indication that this had to do with the birth of a king. And they were excited about this, yes? And they decided that they would come and they would check it out. And of course, they would bring gifts, and they would incur the favor of this one who the divine in heaven had blessed with this amazing sign. And so they traveled. And instead of discovering a great king, they found a poor child, surrounded by ox and ass, It's a bit like being in Congress, I guess. But there he was. And on the way, they had to stop by and check out the Jewish king Herod. Now, can you imagine the king has not had children in a while? And somebody says, we understand there's a new Jewish king that's just been born. Herod, being a shrewd man, said, well, I'm going to take care of this problem. Yeah, so he played nice and wanted to know when and where and identify this child so he could pay homage. Yes. Of course, we know the story that's rarely read in our regular Sunday readings, which is that because the wise men did not return to Herod and tell him exactly where the child was, Herod sent the troops out and butchered all the children under 2 years of age in that area. So from the very beginning of Jesus' earthly life, the cruelty of the world was present. But all this just seems like an interesting or not so interesting story of long ago, maybe religious myth, maybe a story from the pre-scientific era. What has it to do with us? Well, the early church, especially the church in the eastern part of Europe, the Orthodox Church, this was critically important because this story pointed out that the birth of Jesus, that God with us, was not just for the Jewish people, but for everybody, for the whole universe to see, and for the many, as they call the many non-Jews, the Gentiles. This was a sign that God's grace through the Jewish people, and this baby was offered to everyone. Okay. What is this then to do with us? What does this matter for us? Anything? We call this Sunday Epiphany, meaning the revelation, right? Or a theophany, which is a revelation by God of God's self. But does it say anything to us? For the early church, it was proof positive that God was doing something for everybody, that God was coming to live among all people with love and grace. But they don't prove much to us today, do they? We measure our truth by more important things. Twitter feed, Facebook feed, political pundits, all those reliable sources of divine truth. Even science is eclipsed by the wisdom, the great wisdom of these sources, so that we're able to ignore the vast body of evidence that says that we're destroying the climate on this planet. But why would we believe an ancient story about a star and a bunch of wise guys who saw the star and then read religious texts? Why would we care about this? Oh, and for some people, they're foreign too. Yeah. And yet God is still revealing God's self to us in countless ways. Light enters the dark places of our lives. Love penetrates our sorrow and grief. Grace opens doors we do not know even that they existed. The heavens open up in our hearts to give us hope and life that seems to come from beyond, to fill us with joy when there is no other reason for it. To create a way for us to move forward in the world despite the enormous obstacles that seem always to find their way in our lives. We do experience transcendence, a connection across the barriers that our minds and societies impose on us. We find that as our hands reach out to something beyond ourselves, we are touched in return by love itself. And God is in this world. For those of us who have experienced grief, we know how dark it becomes. For those of us who have migrated from another country and culture and continent, and we find ourselves alone, we know how dark it can feel, how lonely it seems. And yet the same God that we have known before our grief or before our move is with us in this place, reaching out to us to touch our hearts and our minds, to open us up in grace and love. And those of us who struggle daily with many things, achy bodies, aching wallets, aching creditors' letters, those of us who have cars that don't work that well, or needs that don't work at all, right? These things keep reminding us that the world is dark, is difficult. But God is reaching across into our lives. God is reaching out to touch us, to connect us with God's own love, and to connect us with others who share in that love and who will love us across the barriers that seem to separate us. Some of us are gray, some of us have perfect heads like Brother Craig, it's bald, and God covered the rest with hair. Sorry, women, Some of us are black or white or yellow or green or purple. Yes, sometimes we see hair that color. Yes. We're different. And yet in all of that difference, God's love is present with us. God's love reaches out to each and every person. You are never alone. God's love for you is never forgotten by God. And so, my friends, the revelation of God is here for us today. Maybe a sense that window speaks to us. Maybe the handshake of someone new that you met today. Maybe a cup of coffee. But God is indeed with us. And God's love for us never dies. So, my friends, take joy. Take joy. That divine grace is reaching out to you every day. That the heavens are indeed opened to reveal God in our lives. And may hope arise in the midst of the noise of our lives. And may we come truly to know that God is here for us every hour of every day. Amen.